everyone. So ideally I would like to do this video in person, but due to the coronavirus, I figured that me and Nikki could get out here and do this for you in a video. So I'm just going to talk about some quick showmanship do's and don'ts. So for those of you that are beginners, I'll kind of talk through the way that judges will structure a ring and the hot dog method of how you should go about showing. So if you're more experienced, you can go ahead and skip forward a little bit. So the main goal when we're showing sheep is to make sure that they are set up. So as you can see, her front legs are directly underneath her. Her back legs are out just enough to make her look really attractive. Nikki, pop her forward like too much. So it's important that you get her set right so they don't look bad like that. Go ahead and set her back. So this ideally is how they should look. Their feet should be pretty much near perfect. Her front foot is a teeny bit off, but that's okay. And notice head placement. So it's really important to have their head at least a 90-degree angle and having their nose relatively level. Obviously this ewe is a teeny bit shorter, so that's kind of hard because Nikki has super long legs. But it's important to make sure they look good. Right now you'll notice that her loin has a teeny bit of a gap in it, so Nikki can go ahead and fix that. Yep. So it's important to know your animal. When you guys are practicing at home, I highly recommend that you have a mirror so you can see what you're doing wrong. Because one thing to be able to get them set up right, but it's important to be able to keep them set up right. This ewe's been to a ton of jackpots, so she is very used to getting set up and being stuck. Obviously our fair sheep are going to be a little bit different. So this is basically the gist. If I were the judge right now, Nikki would be on the right side because I haven't crossed the sheep's head or his butt. But the second that I move, Nikki will move with me. This is what I mentioned earlier, the hot dog style. So essentially you and the judge are the buns and the sheep is the hot dog. And you cannot let your hot dog fall out of your bun. So when you get in the ring, what's gonna happen is the judge is gonna make you guys walk in and have you set up this way. So if I were the judge, this is how all the sheep should be. Then what the judge is gonna do is gonna make you guys probably walk in a circle again. He might come up and touch them. So Nikki's gonna show you how you should walk your sheep. So go ahead and walk them in a circle, Nikki. So it's really important, and this ewe does it really well, to get them walking kind of fast, as well as holding their head up. A lot of times, especially with younger kids, they don't want to put a lot of pressure on their head, and so the sheep will kind of have their head, profile, Nikki. The sheep will kind of have their head out, but the more you get that head back, the more attractive the sheep looks. So again, making sure they have a little bit of a faster pace because they really are athletes, and so you want them to show that off. So once you do a lap or so, the judge will have you set up. This is the profile view. So if I were the judge, I would be able to see the sheep's profile. You got front legs off. And you can tell I'm kind of correcting Nikki through this, and that's because we currently don't have a mirror, so Nikki can't 100% see what she's doing wrong, which is totally okay. Practice makes perfect. You'll notice when Nikki shows sheep, she sets by hand. Do I recommend this for younger kids? No, because a lot of the times you guys aren't tall enough to reach over the top of them. So you can practice bumping them into place. You can do this by like running their back end into a fence and getting them comfortable with standing there. And then once you get them stuck, just stand there. When you get to the fair, chances are your sheep are going to be in the ring for like 10 to 15 minutes. So it's important that you practice and build up that stamina for yourself and for the sheep. Nikki, she's too stretched. So you can see she's kind of starting to break because her legs aren't directly underneath her, and Nikki fixed it. Another thing I want to talk about is hand placement. That's super important. So a lot of times what the younger kids want to do is they want to either hug the sheep or they want to use their ears as handlebars. I'm going to be honest, when I started showing, this is what I did. And it maybe doesn't look the most attractive. So if you look at Nikki's hand placement, she's super relaxed, but the sheep is still stuck. I mean, she can do it with one hand. Not that I would necessarily recommend that in the ring. But again, Nikki's had a ton of practice. it's really, really important that you guys are showing with your legs. If your legs aren't hurting, you're doing it wrong. And if your arms are, you're doing it wrong. It's important to get the sheep to brace because that's the reason your legs are there. You want them to be pushing against you. You want them to be running uphill. So if you're not doing that, you're not doing it right. You don't want to be yanking up on their heads because if you were in their position, I'm sure you would want to cooperate if your head was getting yanked on every 5 seconds. So if you just stay really light on the head and focus using your thighs against the body, that is the recipe for success. Nikki does a really good job too of just keeping that neck level. I've found that's one of like the biggest things that younger kids tend to forget. And then we can talk about Nikki's leg placement. Obviously, Nikki is a lot taller than most of you, but she uses her legs to brace into the sheep. One thing, again, a lot of kids don't really understand is that you're essentially bracing their like shoulder area. You don't want to brace in the neck. Obviously, again, Nikki's tall, this sheep is short, so her neck kind of gets covered, but that is not where you want to be concentrating your legs. You want to be concentrating them more in their chest, because if you start bracing into their neck, you're going to choke off their airway, they're going to get mad, they're going to start coughing, and they're not going to cooperate. So Nikki, go ahead and run her in a circle again. And depending on like what you're in the ring for, the judge will have you walk in circles quite a few times. Notice how Nikki does not yank on the back of her head. A lot of younger kids think, oh, I'm gonna like yank on the back of her head, try to pull her to get going, but that's just gonna make them not want to walk. So she kind of uses that one arm for support to keep her head straight, but she mainly just uses one hand. So again, Nikki set the legs by hand. For the older kids, this is where I really want you guys to listen, because if you're tall enough, to me, this looks a million times better and it's a lot more accurate. So Nikki, go ahead and model what you do. So notice where she puts her hand. She puts her hand over the nose so that the sheep won't go anywhere, and she keeps that head back. Then she reaches over and sets the legs by hand. Notice how her feet are together in the middle of the sheep's body. If you're shorter, it's super important to stretch down their body as far as you can. Again, Nikki's really tall, but the more you stretch over their body and put your legs closer to their rear, the more of a reach you're going to be able to get. Ideally, you would want to set their front feet by hand too, but again, this sheep's pretty show broke, so Nikki doesn't really need to, because she can just pop her into place. I do not recommend that for younger kids, and I do not recommend that for those who aren't as experienced as Nikki. And then Nikki just goes ahead and get into her. So now let's kind of touch base back onto our hot dog. So if I'm the judge, the second I cross that sheep's ear, oh hi sir, Nikki is gonna move forward in front of the sheep and show off their front. Notice how she has her head pretty yanked back, so she looks like she's bracing. If Nikki were to not have her head yanked back, she doesn't look as attractive. So this, if you yank their head back and keep their nose relatively level and pop those ears forward, they look a lot better. So if I'm the judge, Nikki would switch. And then once I cross that ear, Nikki will get back into her. Maybe her legs aren't the best, but it's all right. So these are just some showmanship basics. I think what I'm going to do from here on out is talk about different topics of showmanship pretty specifically for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, let me know. I also can take Nikki out with me if you guys want like one-on-one help. I'm pretty old and I'm not really in shape for this anymore, so Nikki can probably show you better than I can, but I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you guys later.